Welcome to the Warning Track Power Hour. I am Dr. Andrew Scaff. He is Dr. Michael Werman, Esquire. On today's show, we'll give some preview of the NFL's Week 10 and with our new locks of the week. We'll be talking a lot more about what happened in the previous week, Week 9, and check in on how we've done on our picks so far and on the our full picks also. We'll talk about the end of the World Series. And we'll start today with the Kansas City Chiefs winning on Monday Night Football. Mike, we saw DeAndre Hopkins play in a, a pretty spectacular game yesterday. How impressed were you with D Hop so far, and where do you think this is going with him for the season?
Yeah, I thought Hopkins was really, really good. He had one like amazing catch, the catch down to like the 1 or 2 yard line from Mahomes. It was like 35, 40 yards in the air. That was kind of
Yeah,
improvised. Went up among like three uh, Buccaneers defenders and got the pass. I think I read somewhere that the likelihood of completion was like 12% on that one. One of the advanced stats did, which was like the lowest successful catch of any, I think at least since 2018 for Mahomes, maybe including 20, so maybe in the Mahomes era. But So that was impressive. He also caught, he was a little bit off from what Mahomes wanted on the last drive in regulation, where there could have maybe been a game-winning field goal in regulation. But that was the
hmm
only time. Really, there was any kind of miscommunication. So it seems like within just 2 weeks, uh, him being able to do that, so kind of adjust to the Chiefs' offense, which is notoriously kind of difficult for receivers to grasp, um, really
yeah,
shows a lot. I guess again how good he is and how much experience he has. I guess experienced receivers like Juju Smith-Schuster, he was somebody who could kind of step in and do pretty well in his first year. It seems like rookies have a harder time maybe than most getting it the first year. But I think Hopkins is also somebody that helps unlock Kelsey, because Kelsey had a big game. So it seems like the two of them together, there hasn't been Kelsey, hasn't had, he's like, he didn't have a good start to the season, but he's had really good last few games. So maybe that opens up stuff for Hopkins. Hopkins opens up stuff for Kelsey. Maybe when Juju comes back, hopefully next week or the week after, that can be something as well. And the Chiefs can, rely on those guys, especially as their tight ends are dwindling in number. It seems like they're getting their injuries other parts of the team. So. I was impressed by Hopkins. I was not as impressed by the Chiefs' performance as a whole. I think they should have dominated against the Buccaneers, but part of that was because I think an easy touchdown that Worthy should have had was out of bounds
yeah.
early. Uh, Worthy didn't have a great game. What did you are you concerned at all about Xavier Worthy, or do you think he's going to come along? And what are the other? Do you have any other thoughts on the Chiefs?
Well, I don't think the Chiefs are like fully reliant on Worthy, which is great. Because that gives him a lot more time to develop, in his own pace rather than, having to be like the number one guy, which is kind of where he almost was being thrown in for the expectation of. So it is nice that he doesn't have to do that. So now that he has Hopkins there, maybe that, gives him somebody to look to try to emulate, but
Hmm.
also just be super fast. And then, they're gonna take shots with him no matter what. So I think maybe some of that play that he missed on the sideline, it could have just been partly the weather kind of thing that had something to do with it. It was like a rainy day. Some of the field conditions weren't perfect. I don't think so. Some of those things like add up to little things, especially on the sideline. So
Yeah.
I don't think that was that big of a deal that missed connection there
It did like the Chiefs would have had like a lead going into the first drive. It kind of changed
for sure.
the I guess the tempo, or the timbre of the game, you might say. Uh,
Yes.
um, I were you how rainy was it? I wasn't, I'm not actually in Kansas City. I wasn't in Kansas City. You couldn't really see on the screen terribly well how rainy it was. It kind of got steamy for part of the game from the cameras. Um, it seemed like the camera angles I thought were strange because early on,
Yeah,
like they seemed like they only used the midfield camera. They didn't like it's like the usually that when the ball is snapped, they have the camera basically on the line of scrimmage. And but
yeah,
they in the early, I just noticed that in the early part of the game, like they had a camera that was like pointed like slanted, was about 20 yards ahead or 30 yards ahead of where the line of scrimmage was, and it was a strange uh,
yeah. I don't know why they
view.
do that.
I don't know if that was
I
just
wonder if it
in
was just a Monday night thing or what. Like they try to take a more
or
cinematic view
ESPN.
of it, or
Yeah.
yeah,
An ESPN thing, or whether the
yeah.
cameras it was rainy, that's why they couldn't use all the cameras or not.
And usually they just have like extra like guards over the lens itself, right, to try to keep the water off of it anyway. So I don't know. Yeah, it's weird. I think ESPN does do some weird things sometimes. Anyway. But you know yeah, that's just how we view the game, not necessarily how the doesn't really impact itself on the game itself, really.
Yeah. But
Uh,
I guess
uh, well, one of the things I was going to ask you though was how worried were you about Mahomes when he had that odd step on his left ankle then when he like in the process of throwing a touchdown pass?
I was pretty worried because when they said it was a non-contact injury, I thought, oh, maybe that's a ligament tear or something like that.
Yeah, but
Then I
it
saw,
was like it was a wet turf thing though. I'm fairly certain that caused it.
yeah,
That's what it looked like.
yeah, and
And you could see it was the ankle. It was unstable when he like stepped down.
I had kind of forgotten that he did kind of injured the ankle a little bit in the previous week against the Raiders. Um, so when they said that, and then the way he landed, because they were saying like it was his hip or something like that early on, because it just looked kind of like a weird, just the way he stood up on the leg, because it was like it what the knee, it didn't look like the knee was messed up because it was just like a weird straight leg into the turf. That
Yeah,
I guess probably
I
too
think
much.
it was just because the ankle became unstable, and then everything else looked weird above it because
Mhm.
of that. When they showed it a couple times later, you could see it like fairly clearly that it was that the ankle like rotated. So, but and then all the other things were just like I think because of that. But he still had the composure to like still make the pass,
Mhm.
even though that had just happened. Which that was pretty impressive.
Yeah, I was a little surprised that I thought he was going to run for it into the end zone, but then he stopped like right on the line of scrimmage and threw it to, I guess it was P Ryan, I think, for
That was
that.
P. Ryan, yeah.
I'm glad that because this is one of Mahomes' better statistical games this season because he threw three touchdown passes with no interceptions, so that was
Yes.
much better than his. So maybe having Hopkins near the goal line also, I think, gives the Chiefs a few more, you know, more red zone target. You have Kelsey there, you have Hopkins, you have the other guys, but um, I think just having a receiver like DeAndre Hopkins really helps the Chiefs, especially such a good player on short, with short throws, who has such good hands that they know they can get a third down pass completed. Because I think Mahomes was nearly perfect on third down this game too. So there were a lot of third down conversions that the Chiefs made, and
Yeah.
so that was another nice thing. So the offense I think played really well. The defense I thought they would hold um, the Buccaneers down a little bit, but the Buccaneers defense had some good penetration, good sacks on Mahomes, more than what
Yeah.
the Chiefs were able to get on Mayfield most of the time. So,
Yeah.
um, but I think it's also I think the Buccaneers in some ways still have the Chiefs number in a lot of ways. They know how to play defense against the Chiefs, and Vita Vea, especially as a um, defensive tackle, is very uh, hard to block. And
He hit some huge plays.
yeah,
Were you happy to see? Justin Watson and Peyton Hendershot ended up with catches then late in the game that were pretty important, really.
Yeah, yeah. Hendershot was somebody I think the Chiefs acquired right at the end of training camp. And then I think the Chiefs actually released him when they had other tight ends kind of come in, and I think maybe that was when Jody Fortson came back or something, and now
Yeah,
Fortson is out, and so Hendershot was probably promoted from the practice squad, and he had a catch in the fourth quarter. Yeah, Justin Watson had a couple of big catches. Um, he seems to be able to get open at the right times. And I think without Juju there, I think that helps Justin Watson. Justin Ross was in a couple of a few snaps as well. He didn't get any targets, I don't remember, but it's a lot of yeah. So it's been with Sky Moore out now permanently, or not, or long term at least. Um, having DeAndre Hopkins just as a this guy Moore was anywhere near as good as DeAndre Hopkins, but it's kind of ironic that DeAndre Hopkins has figured out the offense in 2 weeks more than what Sky Moore has done in 2.5 years.
right.
So
But I mean, that's the difference probably between like a likely Hall of Fame receiver and a guy who's only had 2.5 years of his career total. So
yeah,
hopefully there's something there though too to help explain it. I hope.
yeah, I think us both of us probably would have liked the Chiefs to have dominated that game more than they did. They were down by, was it just seven? It seemed like maybe it was more
I
than
think it
that.
was, yeah, 17-10 in the third quarter then, right?
Yeah. Yeah, in the second half they were losing, so they had a good comeback. And I think they also said that was Mahomes' first touchdown pass that he had made in the fourth quarter where the game was tied. Uh, which is
Really?
yeah, they said that on the broadcast that his second touchdown to I guess
I
Hawk.
wasn't always paying attention to the broadcasters, but did they mention that Mahomes' record in games where Mahomes is losing now today?
No, they didn't mention that. He's got a winning record, I believe, in the games that he's trailed. I think
Which
it's
is see
trailed by 10 points or more,
yes.
something like that.
Yeah, I think he has a winning record in games in which he is trailing by 10 points.
Exactly 10 points, I think is
Yeah.
yeah, it's Mahomes is 12 and 0 uh in games that he's trailed by exactly 10 points.
Undefeated.
He has a 583, or until last year he had a um he had a 15 and 11 record last at the end of last year. That was before the Super Bowl. That was before the playoffs though, where he trailed by more than 10 points a game.
I mean that is an actual like insane stat, though, isn't that?
Yeah. Yes.
Like
That's a
how is that even possible to have a
yeah.
winning record while losing, right?
Mhm. Yeah, and even while losing at 10 more than 10 points, the winning record.
Which
But
is that's a significant score differential in the
yeah,
NFL.
yeah, in the it's kind of insane. But yeah, Mahomes is right. Yes, he has a I don't know, he does tend to rise to the occasion, and sometimes he gets a little sloppy when the game is not on the line. But he played really well in the rain last night. I was a little concerned the Chiefs defense allowed the Buccaneers, partly I think because they have a tough time guarding tight ends. It seems like good tight ends like Kate Otten had a good game. Isaiah Likely had. It seemed a lot like the Baltimore game in the first game of the season where the Chiefs should have one that against Baltimore, the Chiefs should have won somewhat comfortably, but they Mahomes didn't have a great game, and they allowed Baltimore to hang around, and then that last drive at the end, Baltimore scored the touchdown on, or almost scored the touchdown on, but likely his toe was out. In this
Right.
game, Tampa Bay did score that touchdown, um, and a lot of it I think was because of the Chiefs being not so good with the tight end, and I'm not sure what needs to be done to correct that. I don't know I don't know what Kate Otten's stats were, but it was a tight end who caught the touchdown pass as well at the end. It wasn't Kate Otten, it was somebody, it was another. Um, Otten had 8 catches for 77 yards and a touchdown
Yeah.
against the Chiefs. But he and some other tight end caught the second touchdown. I can't remember who that was.
Ryan Miller had one catch for 1 yard,
Okay.
three targets, but only one catch.
Okay.
Yeah. But I do think that a lot of the Chiefs' run defense had been much better in every other game than
Hmm.
this one. And I think that was mostly a factor, of the rain.
Yeah, and I
I
think the
think that kind of
defense.
puts your defensive players on their heels a bit when the ground is, slightly slick. They're not
Yeah,
able to, yeah, make sure those tackles land what they're supposed to. And
and also I think the defense can't be counted on every single game to have a great game. It's a little like the offense; they're not going to be great every game, but at least the Chiefs can score enough points when the defense isn't having its best game. But they scored 30 points, and also the Chiefs had the Travis Kelce fumble was pretty important. Again, the Chiefs lost the turnover margin again and still won the game, so
yes,
that's another positive.
and that's been a theme that we've sort of discussed here
Mhm.
in different weeks also. But not necessarily being able to win the turnover battle doesn't mean that it's a terrible thing, but it's not something that we're accustomed to from like Chiefs defenses of the past, right? Especially like in the 90s and
Yeah, the Marty Schottenheimer here was all about the turnover margin and differential because the Chiefs offense was never that great and the defense was always pretty good. And Derek Thomas and Neil Smith and Dale Carter, people that could, they had guys that could intercept the ball, but also guys that could, sack the quarterback and create, fumbles and stuff like that. So, but they didn't have a lot of, they didn't have an explosive offense very much. Or if they did have an explosive offense, they didn't have a defense that was uh, that good either. And so they were still reliant on turnover plus and minus. If the offense didn't play particularly well, they didn't, really know what to do. But like the Dick Vermeil kind of era. But yeah, yeah. So the defense didn't play great, but did well enough. Yeah, Cade Otton. They mentioned that he was forgotten. I thought somebody was going to make a pun on Otten and forgotten, but that seemed
more
that was a little too obvious. But for Joe Buck and Troy Aikman, I don't know. Maybe they don't take that low-hanging fruit.
maybe that is a bit too high for them even for the fruit. Like
Hmm. Out of reach, much like Tantalus's fruit that was ever out of reach, and the water that
yes,
was ever out of reach as well for him to drink or eat.
yes.
Um, Speaking of Tantalus and tantalizing, were there any any other games that were tantalizing on the NFL slate in Week 9? There were some matchups that ended up being pretty close. There were some blowouts as well. Um, what were you have any takeaways from Week 9? And we can also talk about um, our locks of the week, which actually turned out to be on the whole, pretty
Pretty
reliably locked,
pretty solid, yeah.
especially
I would say
on
maybe
mine.
one of the bigger surprises was an upset that you actually called on camera last week. That wasn't one of your locks, but it was.
It was
something
one
that
of my
you did
locks.
call.
Well,
Was it?
it
Oh
was
no.
the spread was one of my locks.
Oh yes, 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 yes.
The spread, but
But
the result I actually called the money line result as well on
yes, what you
uh,
did bet on the big board.
which I did bet. Yes.
Yeah,
Carolina was 7-point underdogs at home against New Orleans. New Orleans, I guess Derek Carr was coming back, so maybe they thought New Orleans was going to be really good, but New Orleans ended up losing that game 23 to 22. Carolina won outright, which was my prediction. But I also thought that no New Orleans shouldn't be favored by 7 on the road against anybody, including Carolina. It was a little bit like that game last week or 2 weeks ago now, where the Jets were favored by 7 over New England uh, in New England, and I thought the Jets shouldn't be favored by 7 over England. I thought maybe even New England might win that game outright, which they did, but I was not bold enough to make that um, bet on the big board. But I did get the spread right. But this time I vowed to um, put my money, my figurative money, where my actual mouth was, and pick Carolina to win. And actually, and then because they won, they also seem they likely got New Orleans's head coach Dennis Allen fired because they lost at Carolina. And it was the Bryce Young led Carolina Panthers, not the Andy Dalton led Carolina Panthers that got that victory. So
yeah. I did not check in on that game at all, so I did not even really pay attention that Bryce Young actually was the player involved in was the quarterback in that
I wasn't
game.
watching any of that either, but I saw that it was I think Carolina was up 23-22 late, and then I saw that New Orleans had the ball, and I thought maybe New Orleans would score, but then they still weren't going to cover, so I was still pretty happy about that. But they didn't actually score at all, and
Yeah.
um, yeah,
Yeah,
Carolina,
Young's stats still aren't very impressive though, but
no,
it was enough.
was
16 to 46, 171 yards, touchdown, one touchdown, one pick. And yeah, did in effectively with New Orleans turning it over on downs on their side of the field. So it wasn't I guess particularly close to
yeah,
flipping, but yeah.
yeah. It was one of those games where yeah, Alvin Kamara also rushed for 155 yards that game, so a little surprising that, and he had 60 yards receiving, no touchdowns. Taysom Hill had a touchdown rushing,
Yeah.
but yeah, I was happy to see that result. So that was one of my locks that was a master lock. How about one of you? So I ended up finishing 3-0 on my locks of the week, and you were, I believe, was it 1-1-1? So we had our first push.
Yes.
Should we talk about the push first, or do you want
Sure.
to leave it to the end?
Well, push sort of leads us to the next bet. It's you did pick games that pick make bets in the same game in different parts of the
Yes.
game. But I had New England at +3 at Tennessee. I was kind of expecting Tennessee to not play very well, and they played okay and enough to win even too. And they won by exactly that field goal. And it was 20 to 17, I believe, was the final,
17.
which was the 3 point difference. So Vegas was spot on the bet, but they don't. Nobody gets anything in this one now. So it just
Yeah.
ends up being a push at +3.
20 to 17 is the home team 20, away team 17 is the most common of any NFL score in history, I believe. And this was one of those games where the home team scored exactly 20, the away team scored 17. And um, I don't, did you ever read the old Greg Easterbrook Tuesday morning quarterback columns
Mm-mm.
on ESPN? And they were on a couple other websites as well. He was making fun of the New York Times for trying to predict the correct score of every football game, and they didn't get one right the whole season. And
Oh, that's
and
how could you? That seems impossible.
well, what Greg Eastbrook said was always pick for every game. If you want to get a score right, you would just simply pick the home team 20, away team 17, and you would at least get some games right. And that was
Yeah.
the way to do it. And so if you ever want to pick the scores, that's where I learned that the home team 20, away team 17 was the most common result of, it's not like it's that common, but it's more common than any other if you look up scoregami, um,
Yes. So you would have gotten one this week.
I would have gotten one this week.
Yeah. If you're trying to pick every game. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is
Um,
that where the Warning Track Power Hour is headed? Instead of making bets on the spread, money line, and over unders of all of the games, are we headed towards exactos? Is that
yeah. There wasn't anything.
exactas?
Yeah, there weren't anything close to a scoregami this week. Yeah, there have been 294 games that are 20 to 17 in NFL history. Um, and Actually, the 29 to 9 Cardinals over the Bears was the rarest of the scores. There have only been three of those.
There was a unique scoregami just a couple of weeks ago, I think. Or do you want a week by week?
I'm going this week. I have
Can you go back like 2 weeks and see?
Let's see if I can go back to I
Was it?
don't
Because I think
I,
there was a unique score relatively recently that, but we didn't we failed to talk about it though during our show of that week. I think
okay.
it was. I'm gonna say it was 2 weeks ago, but
Um yeah, week 6 there's a scoregami.
oh,
There have been
so
two.
4 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
There have been three actually this year so far.
Oh
Uh
wow.
Week 6, Lions 47, Cowboys 9. Uh, Week 2, Saints 44, Cowboys 19. So the Cowboys were on the losing end in two scoregamis this year. And then week 1, 49ers 32, Jets 19.
Hmm.
So there have been three scoregamis. Uh, and
Yeah. How often are there? Is that normal to have three in one season?
I would guess, well, each season it probably becomes less and less likely to have a
Yes.
origami. So I'm not
Any
sure
at all, but
how many there were in previous seasons. Um, I'm looking at the most common ones. I think, yeah, 20 to 17.
well, there were nine scorigamis last year. I found a website that has scorigamis by year.
Oh, okay. Yeah, 294 is 20 to 17. I'm trying to see what the next closest game is. Looks like it's 24. No, it's 23 to 20, I believe, is the second most. Uh,
Hmm.
206 games have been 23 to 20,
Hmm.
but 20 to 17, 294, 21 to 17, you would think would be very common. It was only 108, 21 to 17 games. I think that's odd. I would think 21 to 17 would be almost as common as 28 to 17, 20 as
Yeah.
20 to 17. Actually, 24-17 though is 179. Um, so that's fairly common. 27-24 is 236. So maybe it's 27-24 is the second most common scoregami. There have also been a lot of 13 to 10 games. I would guess that's probably more common in the earlier days of the NFL
Oh yeah.
than recently. Um, there have been 63-0 shutouts. There have actually been 73-0-0 games.
Really?
Yeah.
Those had to be pretty early, you would think.
Yeah. There have been 5-2-0 games, but only two 3-2 games.
Yeah.
3-5-0 games. There's never been a 4-0 shutout. That would be
Oh.
that's a scoregami waiting to happen. There's also never been a 46-0 shutout either. That is the next highest point total that has. So if shutouts, there have been 11 45-0 shutouts, 4 47-0 shutouts, but no 46-0 shutouts.
Has
That's
there
right.
been a 5-0 shutout?
There have been 3-5-0 shutouts and 86-0, 93-7-0 shutouts. There have been there's only been one 11-0 shutout. So that's the one of the rare low shutouts. Um,
So how about this for a statistical question, Mike, combined with like a sort of betting aspect to it? We're looking at number of scorigamis per season. If I were to give you the choice of the first season versus the field of all of the remaining seasons, which do you think had the most
ooh,
individual? What year do you think had the most individual scorigamis
I
in just a single year? So the first year where all the scores are unique,
hmm.
or any
Well,
individual year subsequent
any
to that
individual
first
year
year. Yes.
or
Do you think there were
or
more scorigamis in any individual year than the first year?
hmm. Maybe the second year, just because maybe there were a lot more repeated games that maybe I guess you could say maybe like there were a lot more low scoring games that would be repeated, and then
Yeah.
when the offensive era gets a little higher, there might be more variety that's possible. So like maybe early football, maybe there's a lot of 7-6 games, a lot of um, you know 7-3, 7-0 types of games, but then later on you can have more variety. So I guess I'll go with
Well,
the
and things changed a lot for the sport itself. Like there was no forward pass until
1906,
later.
I believe. Yeah. I don't know
So
when this scoring got, but the NFL wasn't around in 1906. So I think the
yeah.
NFL has always had the forward pass.
So this site tracks it back to 1920.
Okay.
So this shows 1920 as the first year.
Well, there also weren't as many teams, so there might not be as many games.
Well, also, I don't think any individual team played nearly as many games as any individual team plays now, and so there are fewer teams also. So, taking all that into account, though,
I'm gonna go field.
you would take the field,
Yeah, you're.
and you would be incorrect
Uh,
because apparently there were 50 scorigamis in the first season, and no other season had more than 22.
really?
23, 1960, there were 23, and in 62 had 23 also.
Ooh, early 60s. That was interesting.
And then there was another most years there were single digits. There was only one scorigami in 1992. And then there was an sort of like revert reverted to the mean, and there was more randomness in future years. 898 there were 15.
I would guess
And then yeah,
reintroduction.
there's not. Now there aren't very many. There's
I
usually
bet the
less than 10.
reintroduction of the 2 point conversion probably created more opportunities for scorigamis.
Oh, yeah. So
That
yeah, when was that? Was that in around
it would have been
98?
after. I think it might have been right after 92. Um,
Yeah. So there were from 88 there were 11, and then it went only 2, 3, 3, 1, 6, and then it went to 10, 13, 13 in 94, 95, 96. So
okay,
maybe the 2 point conversion was
94 was the first year of the 2 point conversion.
so there it is. Yeah. So you could find it via the scorigami
Hmm.
list. And so it became more randomized because there's a scoring
Hmm.
change to the sport.
Yes.
That's pretty funny. It's nice when that does work out that way,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah. This is a good detective work by us. Should we
Yeah.
bounce? So where we were talking what we were talking about the push game 2017,
Yes.
I believe. I think that was the least scoregami score. Um, I
Yes.
was that was a very close game for me as well. It was a 30 the line ended up moving a little higher, the over under to 38 and a half by Sunday, but when I made my bet it was only 37 and a half was the over under between New England and Tennessee, and of course they scored 37 points total. And I was lucky because that was also an overtime game where it was 17-17 going into overtime. And if one team had scored a touchdown or if both teams had scored somehow, it would have gone over. So I needed just a field goal to seal the victory for me.
Yes. So
So
you needed a failed possession
I did.
from one team or the other, and then only a field goal. Yes.
Yes,
And you got it.
I did. So that was my second lock of the week that was locked. How about you? Should we talk about your lone victory or your lone defeat, Dr. Scaff?
Personally, I'd rather get the defeat out of the way.
Oh,
So I went to the I had the Thursday game. I had Houston plus 1.5 against the Jets. I was kind of expecting Houston to maybe overcome some of their woes against a Jets team that has been struggling. Jets, however, did not abide by that and played a pretty decent game on Thursday night. Well, decent enough to win, and Houston did not look so good, and
no,
that
they did
ended up
not.
being a 21-13 Jets win, which is more than the 1.5 point spread that there was in the Chiefs. So I took that loss. And that was our only loss collectively.
Yeah, we were 4-1-1. Um, I was my other my third lock of the week that was successful was the Rams at Seattle. The Rams were down early in that game, which made me a little bit worried. The Rams were actually 1.5 point underdogs when I made the bet. I believe they became 1.5 point favorites as the week went on. That line shifted a bit, if I remember correctly. Um, and so the
Hmm.
Rams uh, won outright by 6. Or did we get the line wrong at the beginning? Line wrong at the beginning? I don't think we did. I think it shifted.
Yeah,
Um, um, and the Rams won by 6 points at Seattle, 26-20. So my plus 1.5. I thought they would cover and win, and they did both. So the Rams are, that NFC West is looking kind of interesting because it seems like the two because all the teams have a shot at winning. All four teams have a shot at winning that division right now, and but
yes.
none of the teams are running away with it at all. Um, and we have the Rams and the Cardinals, I believe, on top in that division right now. And
Yeah.
then it's the 49ers, and then it's Seattle at four. Like there's only maybe one full game separating top from bottom. So
And that Rams line did flip. I think I even had messaged you about it, just to let you know, because that was one that you had picked. So like it made the odds makers were maybe listening to you,
I'm a pretty
and
heavy hitter. So
probably, moved the line possibly because of your comments.
yes, I'm sure. Uh, how about your successful lock of the week, Dr. Scaff?
My final pick of the week, I had Detroit minus 3.5 at Green Bay, and that one did go my way. So that was my only correct pick of the week. Detroit's playing pretty solid right now. They seem to have probably cemented themselves as the best team in the NFC. They're at 7-1 now. Um, Probably the NFC favorite. Then would you say from the
Yeah, I
performance in
think
this last game?
so. I think they are. I think in terms of record, the teams that are the closest to the Detroit are Washington and Philadelphia, and I think this consensus would be that Washington is a little too young and not experienced enough to
Yeah,
be con contender, at least at the level of contender that Detroit is, and then Philadelphia has only lost 2 games as well, but they're a little volatile and I think they seem, at least a couple weeks ago, seemed ready to implode, and maybe there still are at some point. You might remember last year, Philadelphia had a really good record for the first 8 or 9, maybe 12 games even, and then they really stumbled going into the end of the season, and they lost their first playoff game. So that's still possible under Nick Sirianni. Um, but yeah, right now Detroit, I think, is definitely the class of the NFC, especially with San Francisco's struggles. I think at the end of the season, you might say, well, maybe San Francisco could be up there with maybe Philadelphia if it turns out that they're able to kind of continue on their um, winning ways, but and
They
maybe
stave off the implosion until beyond the season.
yeah, and I guess Minnesota's also only lost 2 games, but they've just Detroit has already beaten Minnesota,
Mm.
I believe, at Minnesota. Um, so
Yeah, it's the Lions ended up winning this most recent game against Green Bay by 10. Line was only 3.5, so easy, fairly easy cover there. And the Lions victory was at Minnesota, as you
yeah,
recollected correctly.
oh, good. Yeah, I think so. Those were our last week. Now I've moved to 14 and 13 through week 9, one
Oh,
over 500, but I'm still slightly behind you because now you are 14, 12, and 1 with that push. So now I am a half game behind you, but we are both in the black now, out of the red,
yes.
the black. Um, and to paraphrase Neil Young, uh, whose song was out of the blue and into the black. Um,
Ah,
but um, but we're both above 500. However, on the big board, we are both below now even money on the season because I had a pretty good week. I won $660 total. You lost almost $500, so now you're slightly below.
yeah.
Uh, you're about $350 under on the year. I am about $800 under on the year. So I'm approaching you. My all under bets came through this week. My money line bets because I made that good bet on Carolina to defeat New Orleans. I was able to have a solid week of winnings, and yeah, so we're getting at least closer, both of us, to each other, and we're staying at least within shouting distance of uh, breaking even.
Well, that was like an $1,100 swing though from this week.
Yes,
Your solid return. And your all unders bets wasn't bad this week. Like last week you had struggled with that
I think I was only five
because
out of 16. I was 8 out of 15
yeah
this
the
week, so
the overs were heavy winners last week. This time the unders
mm,
edged it out.
I was really good on the money line, and I was solid enough on the spreads this week to win some money. And you were a little bit under. You're about breaking even on a little bit below breaking even on the spreads and the money line, and then on the over unders you weren't so good because you I
Yeah,
think picked more overs, I suppose, and you just didn't go blanket over. If you had gone blanket over, you would have been 7 out of 15. I think you're only 6 out of 15 this time. So, are
right.
you thinking of doing a blanket strategy going forward, or are you maybe going a kind of um, sort of hybrid blanket, non-blanket over under strategy going
These
forward?
last couple of weeks I have noticed a trend though, Mike. I think the it seems that the noon games have been pretty heavily overs in the last several weeks. Well, the afternoon games have the like 3 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Eastern games have been pretty strongly unders the last several weeks. So maybe shifting my strategy a bit that way. The primetime games have tended towards the overs.
So you think
So
you
that's been kind of interesting to see how that maybe that's a bit of a trend. So I may be trying to exploit that this week rather than just like trying to just sort of randomly pick. I don't really want to do the blanket over under. I'm not. I don't know. I don't quite want to do it that way. I don't think you're already doing that. You're already testing that theory. I don't need to
that's my theory, and I
just
feel like
oppose your theory or just copy it. That's not that doesn't help us learn anything new. So
it frees my mind up for the other picks. I can do better on the spread and the money line if I just say I'm going to go under on everything because I
yes.
then I think my mind is more focused and um, on those. And it seems like it's been working at least for me this year. I am doing better than I've done previously, even if the unders haven't been coming through all the time. On my other picks, the spread and the money lines, I've been doing better than last year. So I'm going to keep that up, and I'm going to keep up. Um, and I've also been steering away mostly. I did do a over under and my locks of the week. I think I'm going to continue probably doing mostly spreads on my um, locks of the week as well, but I might do an occasional over under.
Well, oh, so we are. No, wait, that's. I was gonna say we are remarkably close to where we were last year, and that's because I pulled up the same sheet. Like I had, we were remarkably close to identical because I'm looking at the exact same numbers. Is that why? That seem right? No. Let's see. At this point in week 9 last season, you ready for how different we are?
hmm
Right now, you're at minus 809 for the season. Last year, you were at minus $5,200 at this point.
Yeah, yeah, I was doing pretty badly.
Well, I am doing worse than I was. I was almost 2 grand last year at this point, and down $350 this year. So
I didn't realize I was over 5,000. I was over 5,000 down at this point.
apparently,
Wow. Yeah. I think so my strategy has paid off at least to not lose as much money by
I
doing.
didn't remember that it was that much.
I was way down. I thought maybe by the end of the season I might have been down by that much, but I didn't realize I was down that. Maybe I kind of just treaded water at the end of the last few weeks. Um,
Wow. Yeah. You got down to like minus 8,400 week 6. That's a small car, small used car.
yeah, that's why you don't bet every game usually. Um,
That does make sense as to why this would not be a good idea. Yes.
I think at the end I was only down 3,000. If you go to week 17, week 18 last year, I was down about 3,000 total, maybe. If that is right. I'm not sure how correct those are, but
No.
but speaking of being incorrect, should we move on to the World Series? We were both wrong about how the World Series would turn out. The Yankees did not even muster enough of a comeback in the series to even take the series back to Los Angeles. They lost in Game 5, a game where they had a 5-0 lead at one point, and they blew it through all sorts of errors and you know boneheaded plays and a comedy of just bad baseball. That
Yeah.
so they lost in 4 games to 1. Five. The Dodgers are your 2024 World Series champions. What did you learn anything from the World Series this year, Dr. Scaff? Are the Dodgers the team to beat going forward? Are they also going to take Juan Soto away from the Yankees and add him to their already prodigious lineup? Is there any stopping the Dodgers moving forward?
Well, really, I think all this World Series really proved is that if you spend a fortune, you have a chance to win a World Series. That's what it really looked like, right? Yeah, so it was like the two richest teams battling each other. Um, the Yankees West seemed like they had gotten the advantage at this point and have probably a brighter future though too. I think their players their bigger stars are probably younger, especially with their international signings. But especially depending on what like Juan Soto does. Now, Mike, to get your hopes up, I believe Juan Soto did say that every team is a possibility. He did not rule out any particular team at all. So your dream of Juan Soto coming to the Royals to pair up with Bobby Witt Jr. is still on the table.
Still on the table. He'd also be pairing with re-signed starter Michael Wacha, who signed a 3-year deal with about worth about $18 million a year uh, going forward out. What do you think of the Michael Wacha 3 years deal signing? I believe it's mostly front loaded. His third year is not as many. It was only $14 million. You were, I think, a skeptic of Michael Wacha even going through the season. Um, do you think that it was wise for the Royals to retain him, or did they just simply catch lightning in a bottle this year, and the next couple of years maybe won't be as good for Mr. Wacha?
I think he had a great season, and he turned out to be much better than what I would have guessed. I think it really helped that the expectations of him weren't the same as what the Royals' expectations had been for Zach Greinke, who's basically the same player as Michael Wacha. So I'm surprised that the Royals re-signed him. I thought he would probably walk and go somewhere else. Uh, that was kind of what I would expect. I am really surprised to see him back with Kansas City. Did you think he was gonna resign? I think because he opted out of his contract. Did he opted out of his contract, was he just a free agent?
Yeah, he had a
Was it a
opt in
player
or opt
option?
out, but I think he
Yeah,
wanted a long-term deal because
yeah,
I think he likes Kansas City. Probably has still has ties to St. Louis because he played in St. Louis for so long. So
yeah.
the area, um, yeah, he and the Royals played well, and he was a vital part of the Royals' solid pitching staff. Seth Lugo, another vital part. He won a Gold Glove as a pitcher this past week. And Bobby Witt Jr. also won a Gold Glove at shortstop. So these are the first Royals Gold Gloves in um, a couple of years, I think.
Yeah.
Nicky Lopez win one a couple of years back. I think maybe was the last one. I'm not sure when they'll. Um,
I don't think he won though, did he? I think he was in the running for one, but I don't think he actually won one, did he? Did he?
it was the first Royals Gold Glove since 2021. Um,
Might have been. No, I don't know.
um, no, Nicky Lopez never won. 2021, Andrew Benintendi and Michael A. Taylor each won.
Ah, that makes sense.
Alex Gordon won in 2020, 19, 18, 17. Perez also won in 2018 and 16, 15. There are multiple winners, 2015, 2014. Alex Gordon also won two platinum gold gloves in 2014 and 2020. He won one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight gold gloves total for the Royals. Up there with Frank White in Royals history. I believe Frank White also has won 8 gold gloves for the most of any Royals.
How many does Sal have?
Salvador Perez has one, two, three, four, five. The biggest, this is surprising. There was an 11-year gap between 1989 and 2000 where no Royal won a gold glove. So not one Royal was the best at, or one of the best at his position for 11 years from 1989 to 2000. Is that surprising? Jermaine Dye won in 2000. Brett Saberhagen and Bob Boone each won in 89.
It is pretty surprising.
That there's that. And then,
But I guess I'm trying to think of like they did have like a long string of not so great infielders during that stretch in the 90s. And
yeah. But they had a lot of like light hitting catchers that you think must have just been in the lineup because they had good gloves. Like, maybe Brent Maine was a good fielder or something. Why did he play so much? Or uh,
Yeah,
Mike
Mike
McFarland was a solid
McFarland.
catcher for a while. You thought maybe he'd win
Yeah.
one here or there. Um, yeah.
Well, the
But
'90s that would have been like Pudge Rodriguez though too, right? So like he probably
yeah,
was. He may have been like just dominating the
that's
category
true.
for most of the decade for the from the catcher position.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, Ivan Rodriguez won every Gold Glove from and catcher from 1992 to 2001. So he won
Yeah.
in a row at one point. He ended up winning 13 total. Um,
Wow.
so
I,
yeah,
I remembered him being pretty dominant. I did not remember him being that dominant though. Like that's a long time to be that at the top of the game.
yeah, 10 in a row, and then Benji Molina won a couple. Then Ivan Rodriguez won again. Then Jason Varitek won 2005. Then Ivan Rodriguez in 2006, 2007. And then looks like Joe Mauer started a little streak. Matt Wieters got a couple. Then Sal got one, two, three, four, five out of six. So
And so who won the catcher this year?
Cal Raleigh
Oh, Lord.
from the Mariners. It's only been last few years. It's been 1 year winners, and then so it hasn't been a consistent dominant um win.
Individual.
Yeah.
No.
Uh, yes. So, well, that's baseball. We'll talk more about baseball in the hot stove as we move forward. We'll see what happens with the Dodgers, see what happens with Juan Soto and other free agents, and see if the Royals have any shot at any of these guys. But you want to move on to week 10 of the NFL season. Talk about we are the Chiefs play the Broncos at home. I believe one of our locks of the week involves the Chiefs and Broncos, but it's maybe not the lock that us homers would want to take. I believe the Chiefs are favored by 9.5 points. You, however, are taking the Broncos plus 9.5. So are you thinking the Broncos have a shot at winning, or are you simply thinking the Broncos can keep it somewhat close?
I do not think the Broncos have any chance of winning the game, but that doesn't mean they can't. But I do think the Chiefs tend to play games very close, especially division rival games, when probably a lot of people, including us, would rather see them just blow somebody out. A lot of these division games end up being much closer
Yeah, the
than they are expected to be. And 9.5 is, I think, is pretty substantially like two full points at least anyway. The largest spread of any game this week. And it seems odd that the Chiefs are on the that side of it. And they don't tend to do that great against the spread in general the last several years. They are they do have a winning record against the spread this season, but so does Denver. So I think yeah, I expect the Chiefs to win, but I can't really picture this being that big of a blowout. That's my guess. That's my gut reaction here. Is that the spread is too large.
well, the Ravens beat the Broncos. They also had a 9.5 point spread over the Broncos, and they won 41-10 this past weekend over the Broncos. So the Broncos can be blown out. But the
Yes.
Ravens like to blow teams out, and they were also coming off a tough loss to Cleveland in Cleveland, their own divisional.
Yes.
But this is a divisional opponent, like you said. Those games are usually close. Um, so yeah, who knows? I think the Chiefs tend to play, they tend not to care to run the score up. They like to win games. They don't
Right.
really care about embarrassing their opponent or trying to look good while winning. That's something that the Ravens always, it seems like they have done under Harbaugh. They like to score lots of points and win in dominant fashion when they can. It seems like the last many years they've done that, but the Chiefs usually have done better in terms of record and in terms of head-to-head results against the Ravens. So it doesn't seem to matter too much for Andy Reid's team. Uh, home of the ARG, the Andy Reid gentlemanly home stretch, as we have named it. We've seen some of that this year, maybe not as much as previous seasons, because it seems like the Chiefs haven't been, they haven't had that. I don't know. They've won a couple of games more comfortably this year, uh,
Yeah,
and they also, it seems like, haven't been playing with fire quite as much. Uh, when they're up by 5 points, just trying to hold the ball, and then they lose instead of trying to win a game by 12 points, and instead of being up by five, they give the ball
yeah.
back and the other team has a chance at winning. The other teams haven't had too many chances to win unless maybe they've gone for 2 point conversions. Like Baltimore, if they had scored a touchdown, would have had to go for two to take the lead. And same thing for the Buccaneers. You think the Buccaneers made a mistake by not going for two?
It's a risk. I mean, you're basically putting the game up to a coin flip. As long as you think you can make that, as long as if you just kick the extra point, then you're putting a lot on the coin flip, which it seemed like Baker Mayfield reacted to the coin flip pretty negatively. I don't know. Did you see the clip
Yeah,
of
yeah.
the still shot?
But I think also the Chiefs still did have 30 seconds left. They still could have kicked a field. I think if they weren't tied, they would have been a
Right.
little bit more urgent, and they might have, if they were down by 1 point, I think they still could have gotten into field goal range and kicked a field goal to win that game.
Yeah,
It's
because
hard to
they
say.
actually ended up punting, didn't they, on
Punting. Yeah,
fourth
they
down? Because
wouldn't
they
have
would have gone
punted.
for that on 4th and 1 instead of
Yeah. And I
punting then,
think they
right?
would have
So,
played it a little bit differently.
oh yeah,
Uh, So it wasn't a guaranteed win. The Baltimore game, because there were no seconds left, maybe would have been, had they scored, it would have been a guaranteed win or loss, because I think there was no time left on the clock, or maybe six
right.
seconds or something. There wasn't enough time for the Chiefs to do anything. But um,
And yeah, knowing the outcome, yeah, they probably should have gone for two, Mike.
yeah, yeah. Um, I think Tampa also thought their defense was pretty strong and should be able to hold Mahomes at least to only a field goal, and that's what they wanted to do. And
Yeah,
it didn't end. But yeah, so you're betting against the Chiefs on the spread this week. I
on
am
the spread,
going
yes.
back. I'm not using that as one of my locks of the week. I am betting on lesser games. I did well with Carolina last week as a 7 point underdog. I'm actually going back to Carolina uh, at home as 4.5 point underdogs to the New York Football Giants. The Giants, the G-men, are favored by 4.5. I think they have the same record as Carolina right now. They're both 2-7. I don't think the Giants should be favored by any. They should be favored on the road, really much against any team.
Yeah.
Maybe one or two against Carolina on the road, but 4.5 is quite a bit. So I think Carolina can at least keep it close and maybe win outright at home against the Giants. The Giants, I think Brian Dable's probably on the hot seat. Daniel Jones hasn't been great. They of course don't have Saquon Barkley anymore. So um, I I see the Giants maybe running into trouble in Carolina. So I like Carolina plus 4.5 at home.
Just because you mentioned Saquon Barkley, did you see that reverse jump that he had there yesterday
Hurdle,
where
yeah, he
he
had that cool
the
spin move, and then
hurdle
he
leapfrog
had like
sort
a
of thing, but
backwards
backwards?
hurdle kind of leg, like yeah, like it was with a guy ran in between his legs. That was really very impressive. Probably I've never seen anything like that.
I mean, how he even thought to do it, let alone pulled it off, seems
Yeah,
unbelievable.
yeah,
Really.
yeah. It was an amazing play. Um, Speaking of an amazing play, what is your second lock of the week, Dr. Scaff?
So now that we've gotten the Denver KC game out of the way, at least anyway, I'm betting on teams that are have very good records playing against teams that are struggling. I think for my other two picks. So my next pick, I'm going to go with Detroit, who are a 3 point favorite on the road against Houston. I think Houston is seemingly getting Nico Collins back this weekend,
Yes,
but
that's what I've seen.
we don't know how healthy he is, if he's 100%, or if he's going to be able to play full game, or what his status is for sure. But Houston has been struggling pretty mightily recently. So, and Detroit's been playing, you know, at the top of the league. So I'm gonna keep riding with Detroit. I picked them last week. I'm gonna pick them again this week. Line's a little bit narrower, so it seems seemingly an even easier pick, really. So Detroit -3 at Houston.
Yeah, Detroit. Yeah, Houston's been playing poorly. Like you said, maybe Nico Collins is back, but I think Detroit's been really dominant the last several weeks. So I don't think that's a bad play. Um, I had one at the beginning of the season. I had compared Detroit and Houston as kind of both teams that I thought maybe were maybe due to regress a little bit. Houston, maybe it seems like has done that a little bit after a very strong start, but Detroit has shown no signs of falling back. And like we've mentioned before, they seem to be the class of the NFC right now. So we'll see what happens when they play in Houston. Um, this is I think this is a big game for Houston to try to show themselves as contenders in the AFC. Uh, and they probably need this game more than Detroit does, but Detroit, like they've been really a juggernaut lately. So um, yeah, I don't think that's a bad pick. So Houston played in New York and lost to the Jets, giving the Jets a little bit of life. And now, because the Jets have a little bit of life, they are suddenly favorites in Arizona, going on the road to Arizona. Arizona's been playing pretty well as of late. They really handed it to Chicago, winning 29-9 last week. Um, so uh, Jets did win, but they're favored by 1.5. I don't think that's something that should be the case. I think that Arizona is a better team than the Jets. They're also at home. The way they've been playing is playing pretty well. Marvin Harrison Jr. and Kyler Murray have had a good connection. Um, they've had some solid running attack as well. Um, and um, so I think James Conner, who's been really good with the run game lately. Uh, you know, I just think Arizona's probably going to win that game outright. They're 1.5, and they're 1.5 point underdogs. So I like that pick for me. So Arizona plus 1.5 in the desert.
Well, I mean, that almost sounds like you're betting on Arizona even more than you're betting against Aaron Rodgers and the Jets.
Yeah. Well, I'm not. Yeah. The Jets did win last week, which gave them a little bit of life, but I still see them as a dysfunctional franchise with no real head coach to speak of. Their defense has been iffy at best. Their offense has also been pretty iffy. So yeah, I think Arizona's been doing a lot better. I think they're a better team. So maybe that's one reason I'm voting. I'm picking against the Jets, but I'm also picking for Arizona here.
Yeah, I was surprised. I thought you were going to say more about I thought you would say more things about betting against the Jets because they have not played that well. But yeah, I mean, you made a very solid case to bet just to pick Arizona because Arizona is playing well on their own.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was your second pick, right?
Yes.
But I am to my third pick now. And again, I'm going to go with another team that's playing pretty well in Buffalo. They are at home. No, they're on the road, I guess, in Indianapolis. Buffalo is favored by 4.5 in this one. I expect them to cover that spread. Indy does seem to be pretty, butting up against that dysfunctional category as well. Uh, with Richardson being benched. Flacco didn't look particularly good in the Week 9 game. So yeah, I'm going to stick with Buffalo being able to keep it rolling against another team. This time, so Buffalo's coming off a win against Miami. They tend to struggle against, and they did manage to win last week, which I think may help them. Yeah, at least think they've got something figured out enough to beat Indy by more than 4.5.
I think that is solid. I think yeah, like yeah, I'm not sure how like you mentioned, yeah, Buffalo, they've been playing pretty well. They haven't been playing a lot of good teams, but Indianapolis really seems kind of directionless right now. And yeah, even though it's at Indianapolis, I don't think Buffalo is one of those teams as well, kind of like the Ravens. They don't mind winning by a lot. So, they're not like the Chiefs who are hesitant to win by a lot. So, yeah, I don't think that's a bad pick. But it could be Buffalo could lay an egg on the road like they've done before. But
But any team can lay an egg in any game, any
yes,
week,
yeah,
right?
yeah. You just play the percentages. Yeah, even although these are technically our locks, which should be 100% certain, but it's hard to be certain. Even our lock is probably we're probably have a I don't know 60-40 advantage, something like that. Is that what you feel like your locks usually are?
Uh,
What do you think
I
is
mean,
the
we've been above 500, but
yeah?
I mean, at 14, 12, and 1 for me for the season, or 14, 13 in the year for you, then
Hmm.
that's it's okay, but it's really not impressive though, is it so far?
No.
But it seems that we're trending upwards though, which is
Yes.
we hope. I mean, that's what you sort of expect to see. The beginning of the year is more unpredictable than the season becomes as you learn, as you have more information to sort of tweak whatever mental algorithm you go through to make your picks, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Speaking
We have
of,
done that for the last couple of years, actually. I think we've gotten better as the year goes on.
I think so. Yeah, you get more data. You kind of know what teams are doing. They're a little bit more predictable, I think, as the season goes on. We have more
Yeah.
information about them. I had a hard time picking my third lock of the week. I was wavering between Dallas +7 versus Philadelphia. Dallas has a lot of injuries, but I also think it's a divisional game. They can kind of keep it close. But Philadelphia's been playing pretty well. Dallas, it seems like they might be ready to implode. Dak Prescott and maybe Cooper Rush playing quarterback, who's been pretty good, although as a starter, but can he
Yeah.
keep that up? I was gonna take Dallas +7, but I think instead I'm gonna go with one of the marquee games of the week. Um, I believe with two loss Pittsburgh. I believe Pittsburgh is 6-2 right now, and they're playing at 7-2 Washington. I think that game is kind of a coin flip. I think maybe Pittsburgh is a better team than Washington is. So Pittsburgh is a 2.5 point underdog against the Commanders. So I think I'm picking the Steelers. I've historically been pretty good picking the Steelers when I pick the Steelers. So I'm gonna go with the Steelers again, plus 2.5 against Washington. Russell Wilson as the quarterback, the Steelers offense has been pretty good. And I think Washington maybe still is a little bit untested and green in some of these big games they're going to have to play. So I think Pittsburgh has, with Tomlin as their coach and some of their veterans have been around the block a few more times than the Commanders guys have. So I'm going to pick Pittsburgh plus 2.5, and I might also pick Pittsburgh to win outright in that game.
They have been playing really well, especially since making that switch to Russell Wilson. Has that surprised you so far that they've played better with Wilson
Well,
out in
Wilson
the fields?
hadn't last year. Wilson wasn't too bad with the Broncos. And I think if Wilson is, when he played his best at Seattle, it was when they had a solid defensive team, which Pittsburgh has, and they have a good running game, which Pittsburgh has with Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, right? That's the other guy. And is it Jalen Warren or is it somebody else? I can't remember.
Sounds
Um, Najee Harris and yeah, Jalen Warren, yeah, and Cordero
right.
Patterson's on the team too, so as a return kind of guy. Um, I was I think I got Jalen Watson for the Chiefs stuck in my head, and I couldn't remember what Jalen Warren's
Yeah.
name was. Um, so they're both playing very well. Warren I think has been injured some, but Najee Harris has been really solid. this year. George Pickens is a fantastic wide receiver. And perhaps the Chiefs should have drafted him instead of Sky Moore. I believe he was available before the Chiefs traded back
Mm.
in that draft. Um, but now I think it doesn't really matter because the Chiefs have a good. They have DeAndre Hopkins now on the team, and Rashee Rice has turned out to be a good pick, even though he's hurt now and maybe has legal issues. But um, and they have former Steeler Juju Smith-Schuster, who's maybe going to be able to return from the realm of the injured this week. But anyway, going back to the Steelers, they've had they have T.J. Watt, they have Highsmith, they have um, Hayward, and they have a lot of good players on the defense,
Yeah.
uh, and I think they can pressure Daniels into making maybe some ill-timed throws, some bad decisions. So I like Pittsburgh against Washington there. I'm talking myself into it.
Well, and you're probably not going to see Pittsburgh getting caught in a Hail Mary defensive mistake
No,
scenario,
definitely
right?
not. Yeah.
That seems like something that Pittsburgh won't let happen. So
Yeah.
that seems to be how the types of games you expect Washington to win would be something like that kind of scenario. They're probably not just going to run out to a huge lead to Pittsburgh. That's
Yeah.
unlikely.
Pittsburgh is
So
also coming off the bye, so that's another
right.
maybe sign that Pittsburgh maybe is a little more rested than Washington is. So that's that's my third lock of the week, which is as uh, strong and solid a lock as it gets. How about your third lock of the week, Dr. Scaff?
I already did my third lock of the week, so
Oh, we
we were
did. Yeah, you did
yeah,
already. Yeah, I was
yeah.
thinking you start. I was thinking I started, but you started. So
No, I started this one. Yeah,
okay,
you started on the recap side. I
yeah,
started on the yeah,
my mind has been a little wandering. I've been looking at election coverage.
yeah,
And things haven't been looking so good for the Democratic candidate Kamala Harris
mm,
so far tonight. But um, we won't get into politics too much. But maybe we'll know who the winner of the election is by the time this airs on Thursday. Maybe not. I
possibly not.
Probably, we hope not, probably, given the way things are going right now. We hope that things get dragged out. They still have to count more, ballots that are coming in and things like that. But
Right.
um, speaking of things to look forward to or dread, are there any other games that we haven't talked about that you're looking forward to in week 10?
Well, I mean, you just mentioned Pittsburgh coming off the bye. Another team coming off the bye is playing Tampa Bay that we just saw play in Kansas City. San Francisco is going to be playing at Tampa Bay. Are you interested in that game? No, you may see.
I am. I'm interested because I thought San Francisco did not play as well against the Chiefs. They were not as tough an opponent as the Buccaneers were. And both teams are kind of hovering around 500. Both teams have had their shares of injuries. Supposedly, Christian McCaffrey might be making his comeback against the Buccaneers. Deebo Samuel might be back as well. So maybe Brock Purdy will have more options to throw to and to hand the ball off to. But it's in Tampa. Right now, I think Tampa's 6.5 point underdogs, which seems like a lot. So I might be tempted to
Yeah,
take Buccaneers in that game because even with their kind of lack of wide receiver uh, talent, Baker Mayfield had a pretty plucky performance against the Chiefs. And I think against the 49ers defense, he could do somewhat the same, especially at home. So, but again, San Francisco's coming off the bye, so they're a little better rested, but still, they have to integrate back into the offense some guys who are hurt. So sometimes that first week back is not always the best week back. So I would lean Tampa in that game, but it's not one of
yeah.
my locks of the week for the reason because there's so many variables at play.
Right. All those unknowns makes it tougher to pick that one, especially if we're talking about these for locks of the week. That's really tough to do. And another team that has another thing that makes it a little tricky too. What about New Orleans? What they're going to be the new head coach there? What do you think that does to trying to pick that game?
Yeah, Atlanta's only favored by 3, but they've been a much better team all year. But sometimes having that interim coach, there's a little bit of a bounce that you get. Sometimes not, but sometimes you at home they play if the crowd. I think New Orleans could maybe. get it. I still think Atlanta is quite a bit better than New Orleans, especially although Carr, I guess, will probably be the quarterback, but New Orleans has had a lot of injuries. They couldn't beat Carolina on the road, which is why their coach got fired, but why Dennis Allen got fired. So that's another game I stay away from for the lock of the week. But in the vacuum, I would say, well, probably Atlanta would win that game by more than a field goal, but you never
Yeah.
know with the new coach. So I don't know.
So that might be one that you end up hedging on, maybe even, or you pick one team on the line, but the other on the
That could
or
be.
on the spread, and one of the other on the money line.
That could be. Yeah, I don't know which way I would go for either one though. At this point, we'll. I'm kind of maybe interested in to see which way the line moves. And so if like it moves maybe to Atlanta more than if like it goes Atlanta 3.5, 4, I might take New Orleans. But if it goes
Yeah,
New Orleans, maybe only minus 2.5 or something like that, maybe I'd take Atlanta by a field goal. So something I'm gonna wait for that one.
yeah. And there are
Um,
a couple of like pretty big matchups this week though too. How about a Thursday night game, Cincinnati and Baltimore?
Yeah, that's a big game. Divisional matchup, the AFC North. I think really Cincinnati needs this game uh, to get to 500 to challenge for a playoff position. Baltimore also can't really afford to lose it because they don't want to lose ground between themselves and Pittsburgh in the race, and also allow Cincinnati back into the central race. But historically, those AFC North games are tough and they're divisional. Who knows what's going to happen? So it's a short week. Cincinnati's played Baltimore well enough that I don't think Lamar Jackson's going to have the days that he has been having lately. He's not going to be able to throw for 5 touchdowns and run for 100 plus yards. I think Cincinnati has been able to handle Jackson, uh, and because they've seen him so much. So I think that's an interesting game. But it's Thursday, so that adds a whole another set of just unknown variables to it. So I have no idea what's going to happen. Cincinnati is. I would maybe take Cincinnati as the they're 6.5 point underdogs. Maybe take Cincinnati with the points and think it's going to be a close Baltimore win, but I'm not sure.
Now, what about knowing that even though Cincinnati is 4-5 in the year, but they are 3-1 on the road?
Yeah,
Does that does
it's a
that
Thursday night game, so I think you still have to throw all that stuff out. But I think
yeah,
Baltimore, I still
because it's a Thursday night game more than anything else, right?
Yeah, so I think coming into the season, you would have said, well, Baltimore and Cincinnati are probably about the same level of talent.
Yeah.
Baltimore's just had a kind of slow start. They tend to, like we mentioned before, come on stronger as the season goes on. Um, I think again, if Cincinnati gets out to an early lead, Baltimore will be in big trouble because they'll have to abandon the run more and just throw the ball, and I think that would play into Cincinnati's hands. So I think but if Baltimore got off to a big lead at the beginning, that would be, smell doom for Cincinnati. So it's hard to say.
Yeah.
I think it'll be
No,
close.
but another really tough game to pick too. So
Yeah,
this may
yeah,
be a really tricky week for us on the
I
big
think so
board.
too.
And
Uh,
I like all of our locks, but yeah, the big board I think is going to be tricky at best.
I think another tricky game. I mean, this is a Monday night game. Is Miami and the Rams. Both
Yeah.
of those teams are decent, especially with Tua back for Miami. But the Rams have been solid lately. Stafford has been playing well. I think Puka Nacua has been somewhat hampered with injury, but I think he will play. Um, it was they Rams won big in overtime. It was a great catch actually by former Chief Demarcus Robinson in overtime to seal the victory for the Rams. Um, yeah, that's an interesting game. Do you have a lean one way or the other? Rams are favored by 2.5 in Los Angeles against the Dolphins on Monday night.
And if we go off recent trends, seems like since Tua's been back, they've scored exactly 27 points in both games. So maybe the question is, do we think the Rams can score more than 27 points? I would guess probably not.
I don't
That
know.
seems
I don't think either team will score. I would say the over under is 50 and a half. So the I guess they're expecting a fairly high scoring game.
Sounds
Uh,
more like a 27-24 game, right? Is
yeah, yeah. So the
what
winning
they're expecting.
7. I don't. I think the Rams are more likely to score 27 than the Dolphins are, simply because it's at home, and But the Dolphins, maybe they'll click again like their offense was before, and again, you're always worried about Tua staying healthy and conscious. So it's if he stays healthy, I guess the offense for the Dolphins is one of the best in football. But I think the Rams are just as good on offense if they are clicking as well. Kyron Williams is a really good running back. The Dolphins have been kind of dinged up in the running back position, so yeah, it's a tough game to predict for me. I would lean Rams.
Um,
I'm not gonna hold myself to it yet.
the Rams have been playing pretty well. They've gotten some big wins recently too. So, and Miami has not played terribly well, but seemingly have played better with Tua. So Tua's like shaking the rust off. Might be the game where he's, more like himself, I guess. But yeah, you never know. It only takes one strange collision, and he may be out for the game though too. So that's always the risk of this particular sport. We're watching all the time, right?
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah.
Well, we have week 10 to look forward to. We also maybe have I don't know if we have the election results to look forward to or not. We still have those coming in as Tuesday as we're doing this. Um, so maybe we should end the Word Trek Power tonight and move forward and thinking about the future and see what happens with the election, see what happens in week 10 of the NFL. We wish we want to thank our viewers and our listeners for watching and listening to us here at the One Trick Power Hour. We appreciate your patronage. Um, as always, I am Dr. Michael Werman. He is Dr. Andrew Scaff. We are the One Trick Power Hour. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel or our podcast, which is available on many different podcast delivery systems, vehicles, uh, platforms, whatever word you would like to use. We'll be back next week with more hard-hitting and hair-splitting analysis here at the WTPH, as we call it in the biz. So we'll see you next week. As always, we wish you well with your bets this weekend, as long as your betting interests do not conflict with ours. And why would they? Of course, you'd be taking our locks of the week are gold now. We've been really uh, been on a roll the last several weeks. Why would this roll not continue? We're really coming into our own, I think, in our locks of the week. Now so you'd be a fool not to consider our locks of the week locks. Are you a fool? You remember have you seen that commercial with the with that know-it-all kid? Uh,
Yeah. Yes. Right. Are you a fool? I thought you were going to go with it. It's gold, Jerry. It's
Gold,
gold.
Jerry, gold, Jerry, gold with Kenny Bania. But I was thinking more of that commercial with the kid who's the NFL football expert. You'd be a fool not to consider Joe Burrow. Are you a fool, Mister So and So?
Are you a fool? Yes.
But yeah, that's what we'll have to. That's what. Well, maybe we are fools here at the Winter Pair. We'll see next week whether we are or not. So, um, but we'll find out in a few days. On come Sunday. I guess even come Thursday night, we'll see what happens with the Ravens and the Bengals. Although neither of us had this as our lock game because again Thursdays are always a little bit um, crazy. Just judging from last week where you bet on Dr. Scaff put one of his locks on a Thursday, and maybe he's regretting that uh,
Yeah.
decision.
If you notice, I did not bet on Thursday game this week, Mike.
You did not, neither did I. We're gonna stay away from. I think I'm gonna stay away from Thursdays as much as I can,
Yeah.
unless
And we've heavily avoided as locks, avoided the over unders too the last several weeks. We haven't really picked too many over unders.
I
So
picked one over under last week, but
one
I'm
last week.
simply going with the blanket. unders for things, and
Yeah,
that's been easing my mind, but I don't know if it's the best decision, but it at least is a decision, and that's kind of all you can do on some of those is make a decision one way or the other and hope for the best.
right.
Just as you've made a decision to listen to the One Track Power Hour for this long and have hoped for the best, maybe you've received the best, at least the best that we can do here at the One Track Power Hour. So uh, we will also wish you the best, and we will bid you until next time a good day.